Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Sessions Cafe, brought to you by Entrigue magazine. I'm your host, Keri Singleton, and today we're going to continue our conversation with Mike Africa Jr. here in suburban Philadelphia. What is the first thing that Miss Debbie wanted to eat when she came home from prison? Do you remember?
Yeah. Her first breakfast, she ate bacon.
Yeah?
Bacon, eggs, and home fries. And she could get seconds. That was the
right.
Because in prison you get what they give you.
Right.
But
right.
she could get seconds, and she didn't realize that
right.
at the time. She wasn't thinking about that. I took her to a buffet, and I told her you can get whatever you want as many times as you want.
Yeah.
And it was like startling for her. Like she was trying to remember that she didn't have to ask for permission to get more.
Yeah.
You know, when she went into the bathroom to wash her hands, she was looking for the knobs. You know, because, you know, in prison they have knobs.
Right.
But out here, a lot of the sinks have sensors.
Right.
So she couldn't figure out how to wash her hands. It was interesting.
This might be a personal question. Did she ever tell you what her first night was like sleeping in bed after 40 years?
So yeah, she did. So I moved her into my house. She came. Her first night home was and my kids, you know, they had given up. One of my kids had given up their room for her, and she was. It was a little scary for her. It was a restless night, you know.
Yeah.
She used to being in a room with other people.
Right.
Even though we're right down the hall,
right.
It was still restless nights. And, you know, prison has a way of institutionalizing you. You know, you have to scrap and fight to survive. And
right.
When we lift up her bed, a little while later, she wanted to move her mattress from one side of the room to the other. We lift up the top to move it so to make it lighter. And there was all this stuff that she had smuggled from downstairs in the kitchen, you know, butter knives, and sodas cans, and all these things. You know, it was like kind of sad. Like, in prison you have to get what you can to be able to use what you need. You know?
Right.
And she brought that mentality home. Like the toothpaste that was in the bathroom.
Yeah.
That was now under her bed.
Right.
And I'm like, Mom, you don't have to. We're all gonna. You can use the same toothpaste. You don't have to have your own
ration.
You don't have to have your own tube of toothpaste.
Right. Right.
You don't have to put toilet paper in your room.
Right.
You don't have to fill your room up with all these things.
Yeah.
The knives, the forks, the spoons. They can stay in the kitchen. We all have. There's plenty of down there to go around.
Right. Yeah.
Getting her used to that was a little tough.
Yeah. Your first Mother's Day.
Yeah.
What was that like?
First Mother's Day was like, it was strange because I had never celebrated Mother's Day before. I really didn't know what people do on Mother's Day.
Wow.
I mean, I know people take their mothers out to eat.
Right.
But like, it was really strange because it was like, these are things I've never done before.
Right.
It was a little uncomfortable, a little embarrassing. Because I mean, I don't like okay. You don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And you can't feel what you can't feel. And like calling my mom. You know what I'm saying? It's not a common thing for me to be walking around saying, "Hey, Mom."
Right. Wow.
So just getting used to that was an experience.
Wow.
You know, it felt like I was doing something wrong almost.
So you were doing something different.
Yeah.
Unfamiliar.
Yeah.
And as happy as you must have been with Mom being home, there was still something missing. Mike Sr. was still behind the wall, as well as the other MOVE members from the 1978 confrontation that landed them with 30 to 100-year sentences. But Freedom Day was about to come, as in September 2018, Mike's dad came home And at that point, Mike and Debbie would see each other in the flesh for the first time in 40 years. And Mike Jr. would, for the first time, be with both of his parents.
How did that make you feel, having the euphoria of having your mom home finally after 40 years without her, your entire life, but still your dad, Mike Sr., is behind the wall?
Yeah, it made me feel like job's not finished. You know, remember how Kobe said it? Job's not finished.
Yeah.
We still got more to do. So the momentum that we gained in the release of my mom, we wanted to keep that going and get my dad home too.
Right. And the other MOVE members that were incarcerated, your mother was the first to be released. Am I right?
That's right.
And that had to say that was an accomplishment for you. Had to have been the understatement of the century. Did you kind of feel like it would be easier now that your mom had been released for your dad to come home?
Yeah, I did. I thought that the ball was rolling.
Okay.
And the same qualifications that she needed to be released. I felt like the ball was rolling, and Dad was probably going to be coming home too. The only thing that left me with a little bit of reluctance of him coming home is that he's a man.
Right.
And sometimes they don't have, the state might not have the same type of lenient attitude towards men that they may have against women.
Absolutely. And so, but Dad finally did come home.
4 months after my mom came home, I went to the prison and picked up my dad too.
Reunions, your parents finally together after 40 years and some months.
For separation,
and not soon after their release, they got married.
When my parents came home, I asked my mom, I said, Mom, if there's anything you say you want, you make it happen. I'll make it happen. I don't have a lot of money, but if there's anything you say you want, I'll make it happen. What do you want? She said she was just happy to be home. Now, I asked my dad the same question, and he said, Mike, I want to marry your mom.
Oh, wow.
He said, I want to marry your mom like I should have done 40 years ago.
Yeah.
So I called all his family and friends, and we called up our, supporters, and we hooked it up for them to have a wedding, and they got married on April 6, 2019.
And you was there to watch your parents get married. I'm trying to sit here and figure out for myself.
I walked my mom down the aisle.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
Getting them both out of prison after 40 years, and then watching them get married. I mean, that must have been a hell of a year.
It was a good year.
You all have been apart from each other for 40 years, but your love stayed strong. And now, turn back around to me so we can formalize this. Who gives this woman to be married to this man? Say it real loud so everybody knows. We do! I, therefore, by the power that has been vested in me by the state of Pennsylvania, and most of all by God, I pronounce that they are husband and wife. And may God bless and keep you.
Between 2019 and 2020, all remaining MOVE members that were incarcerated in 1978 were released from prison. Lastly was Mike's uncle, Chuck, who was released in February of 2020. That was Debbie's younger brother. So was it a momentous occasion? Was it all glory and happy days now that they were all out of prison? Let's see what Mike had to say.
The last one to come home was my Uncle Chuck. And we drove through the night. He was in a prison in Pennsylvania that's all the way on the west side of Pennsylvania. If you drive 15 minutes longer in Pennsylvania, you'll be in Ohio.
Ohio, so the opposite end of the state from Philadelphia. Yeah.
And it was a winter night. It was cold. The roads were filled with ice and snow. We traveled literally through a blizzard.
Wow.
To get my Uncle Chuck, and we drove through these. The rural Pennsylvania is windy roads and sharp turns and cliffs. It's mountainous terrain. And we were driving around these cliffs that on the one side was cars and snow, and on the other side was a cliff.
Wow. And
trucks were trying to turn around these jug handles and up against the rock face walls with the ice coming down them. It was a pretty, it made a lot of sense for what we were doing.
Yeah.
You know, I would have been surprised if the ride home was easy.
Right.
Considering moves way into prison,
right? Exactly.
It was the same way on the way out of prison.
Exactly. And let me ask you this: your Uncle Chuck was your mother's younger brother.
Yeah.
And how was that for her? Because they had obviously hadn't seen each other.
She went with me. My mom and my dad went with me to pick up my Uncle Chuck.
Yeah. What was that like for her? Because that's her little brother who she hadn't seen in 40 years.
Yeah. It was a lot of tears, a lot of hugging.
Oh man!
Yeah, the reunification, and they also have other sisters and brothers too.
Yeah.
So to see them all together for the first time in my life, it was surreal. It was really interesting.
Now, by this time, unfortunately, your grandmother had passed on.
Yeah, she didn't live to see her kids get out of prison.
Yeah. So, how was that? I guess it must have been bittersweet for your mother, for your Uncle Chuck, to come home, and their mom not be there to welcome them.
Yeah, because of the way things was and Move members had like interconnected feuds.
Oh, okay.
And so
all families do.
Yeah. And so some of those feuds ran really deep, and it created wedges between some family members and other family members. And you saw the walls of those begin to come down with people as they started coming home from prison.
Yeah.
Some of them, for some people, went up even higher. But for my mom and her sisters and my Uncle Chuck and all of them, the reunion was just, you could see the love that they all had for each other. It was just really nice to see. So that year, 2019, was a big year. 2018 to the 19, that 12-month period, and then the momentum that we had in getting my mom out and then getting my dad out, the following year after my parents got married, just a couple months later, Janet and Janine got out.
Right. Wow.
And then Eddie got out, and I called their families and said, hey, listen, they're getting out, go pick them up, whatever. And then that same year, Delbert got out.
I'm thinking of the song by Kool and the Gang. And you know they just got inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame celebrations. That must have been a straight year of celebrating. Wow.
Not really.
Bittersweet?
Yeah.
Why?
Because the people's infighting created like a moment where we couldn't really. It's like, you know, everybody has a united front on paper and in the press and everything, but in reality they don't get along with each other. So it's kind of like it's like a Tribe Called Quest. You know,
got you.
They, in the albums, on the songs, they do great performances and all of that. But in reality, Fife didn't really like. We don't get along. We ain't cool like that. So they were the same way.
And of course, on September 17th, 2020, Mike Africa Jr. hits the big screen. Let's talk about that HBO film.
And what made you want to bring your story to HBO?
When I was introduced to the producer Tommy Oliver, he had met Ramona already, and Ramona they were talking about doing whatever they were talking about doing.
Okay. And
then Ramona felt that I would be a good person to introduce. Ramona was getting older. She was getting sick. She wasn't really able to keep up with the demand of people's interest in Move. So she brought me in to really supplement. So, but once Tommy Oliver started talking to me and learning more about my story, he felt that it was more interesting than the whole Move story.
Right.
And so he decided to focus the camera on me more. It was totally his decision.
I've been going to prison for 38 years because my mother and father are both in prison.
4 minutes of gunfire, one Philadelphia policeman killed, and it was over. The members of the Back to Nature group move had been routed from their house.
The judge sentenced each to 30 to 100 years in jail.
That's my mama.
When she was arrested, she was almost due to give birth to me. When she did give birth, it was in a prison cell.
So this would have been her cell? Yeah.
This was a counterculture Philadelphia hadn't seen before.
The MOVE organization experienced so much hate and anger from the system.
It was a situation that everybody knew was going to explode. It was only a matter of time.
It's one of the few things I've seen that I'm never going to forget.
Rather than have a basis, dictate our lives, we'd rather be dead. Because to be free is not to be so-called living on this level. It's to be free of the oppressive power of a maniac like RZA.
They were so aggressive and so angry. Nobody sided with them.
Get that death penalty back, put him in the electric chair, and I'll pull the switch.
This was the MOVE house.
It was demolished, so there was no evidence.
When I learned that they were actually in prison, I might have been 13 years old. I started looking for something that would show their innocence. I wound up doing that for over 25 years. The MOVE 9 have been up for parole for the last 10 years.
The denial of parole is violating their constitutional rights.
What can I say about it? What can I do about that? Except just keep on pushing.
Handcuffs keep tightening like eyes that a bright light is in. Every time I fight, the reason I fight is to not fight again. Every time I fight, the reason I fight is to not fight again.
If you don't mind me asking, what did the rest of the MOVE family think about that?
They put me in this position, so they wanted this type of, I guess, leadership to some degree.
Okay.
I don't think they want it all the way, but they expected to be able to control and decide how things went, even if I was kind of the face of something.
Okay.
But that wasn't the case. Once I became the face of something, then I took it over and I wasn't giving it back.
And how did you feel? The advertisements were all over Philadelphia, right?
Billboards
in the city, and how did it feel for a native of the city of brotherly love who had been, ostracized as a young person to see a film billboard, right on Market Street?
Award-winning film.
Mm-hmm.
I felt really good about it. I felt vindicated. A lot of people made a lot of fun and picked fights and criticized MOVE, and me, because of being a MOVE member, being a MOVE child, they just criticized us. They treated us so bad. They looked so down on us so much. And to see a billboard with my face on it, and to know that these people are home after all these years of struggle, I felt vindicated. I felt kind of relieved, but more so like, I got a 6th grade education, and to all of the people who told me that I was going to be a crackhead by the time I turned 20 because I dropped out of school, I felt so good that their idea didn't match who I actually became. They kind of treated me like it was my fault that I was in the position that they expected me to be in. There was no grace. There was no compassion for this kid who didn't have any parents out here, who was in this organization that, I love MOVE, I love my family, but I didn't create the MOVE organization, and I didn't draft people to become members of it. But still, people treated me like I was responsible for the way things went in some way. They treated me like I was, when I was 13 years old, I dropped out of school, wasn't because I just wanted to be a failure. The circumstances in the city, the circumstances with the way my family structure was, that created the situation. But a lot of people, family members, neighbors, they treated me like I was like throwing my life away. But not really giving me any
grace.
I didn't have parents. You know what I'm saying? So to see those billboards up there, and then for some of those people's kids to call me and later ask me for a job. You know what I mean? I felt kind of like vindicated.
So the Reclaim Osage initiative was kickstarted by Mike Africa Jr., and I want to hear what that's all about, what the Reclaim Osage initiative includes, and what are some of the points that will be initiated from this particular project. I know that his great aunt Louise James, who owned the house at 6221 Osage Avenue in West Philadelphia, the house that was, of course, bombed in 1985, on her deathbed, she said to her great nephew, Mike Jr., the one thing that she wanted was her house back. Let's see if Mike was able to come through for her.
I'm just going to say 2 words.
Okay.
And I want you to run with it.
Okay.
Reclaim Osage.
So in 1985, the city of Philadelphia, when they dropped that bomb on Move, after the houses burnt down and they refused to put the fire out, the house was taken from my aunt, the one that was the Move house was
Correct.
taken from her through eminent domain by the
house
city.
that was targeted.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And when my aunt, they took it from her through eminent domain and turned it into like some kind of police holding station.
I remember that.
And it remained that way for like 30 years.
Wow.
And then
a slap in the face.
And then the city decided that they were going to rebuild it, but they were going to sell it to a developer to have it redone. And the same way I asked my parents if there's anything that I could do for you. I don't have a lot of money, but if there's anything you want me to do, I'll do it for you.
Mm-hmm.
I asked my Aunt Louise. It was her house.
Yeah.
I said, she was on her deathbed. I said, before you go, is there anything that you need me to do? She said, yeah. I said, what's that? She said, I want my house back. I said, what house? She said, Osage Avenue.
Well, she hadn't been living there.
It was taken from eminent domain. No Move member, no resident had owned that house since 1985.
Right.
And by then, the urban development or whatever they call it, they sold the house to a private resident.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The resident, I don't know if he knew what happened there or not.
How could he not?
It's possible he did not.
Yeah,
There's a lot of people in Philadelphia that, if you're under a certain age, you don't remember.
Right, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
So, and I don't think he was from Philadelphia either. But anyway, he had gotten so many unsolicited visits, people putting cameras in him and his wife's face as they're leaving the house. He said, we don't even use the front door, Mike.
Wow.
Because there's always somebody trying to take a picture or a video camera or something.
Yeah.
They said, he said, do you want to buy this house? So since I had the chance, I didn't have a lot of money. And unfortunately, even though the city sold their house to the developer for $1,
wow,
the private residents wouldn't sell it for $1.
Right. Yeah.
So he bought it for $300,000.
Mm-hmm.
And at the point that he was ready to sell it, he wanted to get fair market value, which was $360, and then with the Move stipulations and all of that came on it, it was more like $410,000.
Wow.
So now I'm in the process of, so January 10th, 2023, I put up enough money to own it. So we put a down payment on it, and now we own it, and now we're working to pay it off.
And on January 10th, 2023, we put a down payment on 6221 Osage Avenue. I did an interview with 6ABC yesterday, and they asked me a question that I hadn't really thought of, but I think it really caps this whole thing really well. He said, what do you think Louise is thinking of you right now? That was a good question. I get asked some really messed up questions, but that was a good one. My response was, she's jumping 10 feet high in the air right now. And she's hugging me with the memories that we have together that I use as guidance to push us forward. And that's what it's all about. This home, this house is about honoring the legacy of Louise James and making sure that we never forget what happened here 38 years ago. And it's about community. This neighborhood, this block, If you ever listen to anyone talk about what this block was like before the bombing, they talk about the community, the love, how they supported one another.
And of course, now that Mike Sr. and Debbie are out of prison and able to live their lives, what did they decide that they wanted to do now that, of course, they're a married couple and they've accomplished that goal? What else did Mike's parents want to do? I'm curious. If you're curious, let's hear what he has to say about it.
I mean, there's been so many pluses and so many accomplishments. Your dad, Mike Sr., and Miss Debbie started a film company called New Horizons.
New Horizons.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. We want to talk about what they're doing too.
Yeah, their focus is on, they want to highlight the positive things that prisoners are doing since prison.
Excellent.
So some prisoners are taking care of animals. Mm-hmm. Some prisoners are warning other people about the dangers of prison, trying to help people locate the pitfalls. Mm-hmm. They're doing some really important things. They have a couple of films made. They have a couple in the works.
Nice.
And they're thriving out here.
Wow. I'm so glad to hear. Prison is hard to come back from. A prison sentence is hard to come back from. Mm-hmm. For 5 years, 10 years. After 40 years, man, that's the vast majority of their lives.
Yeah.
And for them to be able to come back home, and really, really not just survive, but to succeed and flourish, that says a lot about them, and let them know that I applaud that. I applaud their successes.
Mm-hmm. I'll let them know.
Yeah. Thank you.
Maybe next time we can get them on the show too.
Yeah. Yeah, before we wrap up, we got to talk about your book.
Mm-hmm.
It's a phenomenal book.
Thank you.
Quick read. I read it because it once you pick it up, man, once you start flipping those pages, you can't put them down.
Okay.
I'm telling you. As an author, it was a great read. On the Move, Philadelphia's Notorious Bombing, and the Native Sons' Lifelong Battle for Justice. That's a long title.
A long title. Well, it's called On the Move. The subtitle is the long part.
Right.
Yeah.
He wants to clarify that part.
It's just On the Move. If you click in On the Move, you'll see it. It's there.
And again, what inspires you to put this together? Let's just bring it home.
I really just had to do it because no one else had done it.
Yeah.
That's the real truth. 50 year history of a MOVE organization, and no MOVE member never wrote a book about it. So that to me that just didn't make any sense.
Right. How can people pick it up?
People can go to my website, www.mikeafricajr.com.
I'm proud of you, man.
Thank you, brother.
Proud to know you.
Yeah, man.
And thank you so much for sharing your story and being a part of this platform. I appreciate it.
I appreciate being here.
Mike Africa Jr. What can I say about that brother? I'm blessed to know him and call him a friend, and the world is a better place because he's a part of it. Check out his book, On the Move. It gives a really, really, really detailed story about his life, from being born in a jail cell in Philadelphia to becoming the man that he is today. A visionary, an author, and a motivational speaker, and a beacon of hope for so many people who struggle in this world. Thank God for Mike Africa Jr. And thank you for watching.